This video is going to deal with symbolism in demon souls on an esoteric level. It's not really going to be about exoteric symbolism, though it will, to some degree, have to deal with that as well. But this is going to be quite different from what many of you have seen on YouTube, from the FromSoft lore community, that for the most part merely deals with item descriptions, um, some inquiries into Japanese culture, and very loose connections. This is going to deal with some very intricate symbolism, the like of which, in all likelihood, you have not very often seen. And I think I can say that for a fact because I have seen most of the Demon Souls lore videos. This is basically a blog series I'm doing on Medium. As you can see, it is called Meditations on Media. It's a different way of looking at media, trying to understand it on a symbolic and spiritual level, which is very important to me as a Christian, to understand what I'm watching. I don't know about you, or whatever you may or may not adhere to. I personally like to know what the meaning is of my media is. And so maybe you would like to know, you could benefit from this. So anyhow, I'm going to read this blog post. I'm going to share my understandings. So this is part one. So I would like to present my meditations upon demon souls in preparation for a comprehensive blog or series of blogs detailing symbolism or other esoteric elements in Elden Ring. And esoteric basically means secret. Exoteric basically means something that is out in the open, plain, manifest, or two other um, terms that we can use as synonyms. When we say esoteric, that basically means hidden, secret, occult. Those are all synonyms. They mean more or less the same thing. They can be utilized interchangeably. So this is what I'm talking about. Things that are basically hidden. So we have the NPCs in the Nexus. And one more thing, maybe if you've played the game, will you understand more. If you haven't, I simply have a few pictures in this blog. It's sort of a rough representation of some things. There's not many, but there's some to get a sort of gist of it. Um, I You may ask, well, is this game worth your money? Well, it depends. If you like RPGs, sure, it's better than most of them. In my opinion, this game is better than Elden Ring, simply due to the fact that the story is more, well, in my opinion, it's more substantial. It's it's very contained, and you could say the same thing about Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 in Bloodborne. The storylines in those games are a great deal easier to follow, and the endings in those games are far better than Elden Ring. And that's a whole nother story about what endings are emphasized and given attention in Elden Ring in comparison to particular endings which aren't. And those of you who have played Elden Ring know what I'm talking about. The game has about at least five, if not six endings, and at least three of them are basically the same thing, and nearly no one likes them, but that's a whole nother matter. Demon Souls was very innovative. It had a whole system such as world tendency and many other things. I would simply say, out of all of those Soul series games, I would probably say Demon Souls is my favorite. And if I had to pick one to play, it would be this one. Though I've played all of them, but that's just my opinion. It's it's easier to do a blog post about symbolism in Demon Souls because it it is relatively contained within the Nexus. Most of these blog posts regarding symbolism is going to be contained is going to deal right here in this area, the Nexus, as you can see in the picture. But it the characters in Demon Souls, they give you a great deal of information. Sure, just like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, but specifically Elden Ring, the characters provide more information. They tell you their motivations. You don't have to run around the huge, gigantic map and look under every nook and cranny just to find an NPC to talk to, which is ridiculous. The Nexus is far better than Round Table Hold and Elden Ring. It just simply is. I I don't know even I don't even know how a person can compare the two. It's Elden Ring is very it's quite something. But I certainly do a blog about that, about Elden Ring. It's going to be a very big project. But another thing I'd say about Demon Souls is that not every character has some type of Lovecraftian tragic death, so to speak. And I suppose that style of writing which I'm referencing didn't necessarily start with Lovecraft. It started with Edgar Allan Poe, um, dark romantic writers, and that inspired pulp fiction magazines such as Weird Tales and the like. And it it inspired Miyazaki, all of his games. Basically, if Miyazaki is involved, and it seems as though it's just gotten worse since Demon's Souls. Um, After Bloodborne, everything was very depressing, to be honest. And um, it's in a sense, it's almost as though Miyazaki is channeling Lovecraft, and Berserk is a whole another sort of uh, work that Miyazaki drew upon as inspiration for his Soul series, but that too is quite depressing and tragic, and and to be entirely honest, very evil. Um, there is nothing really ethical about it. This, um, but anyhow, a whole nother story. So let me continue. The NPCs in the Nexus show clear ideological, philosophical, religious, and sectarian differences. I would even go so far as to say that there is both a physical and metaphysical divide between them that is very apparent. Allow me to explain this. As you rise from the Nexus pool facing forward, you perceive an area on the right in which you will find Stockpile Thomas, Blacksmith Baldwin, and further rightward behind Baldwin, we find a worshipper of God, acolyte of God, which are later to be joined by a disciple of God and Saint Urbain. Now, for the etymology of the names of the characters, I'm going to, as we proceed with these Demon Souls blogs, review the names. So, Baldwin, I could not find Baldwin. The only name I could find was Baldwin, which, as you can see, means bold friend. Um, and we have Thomas, which means twin in Aramaic. Nothing very, there really isn't anything very symbolic or significant about these names as far as I've seen. But Urbane is going to be a name that we are going to come back to. Saint Urbane has a very unique name, and it it means urban. It's a French variant of urban, which is derived from the Latin name urbanus, which means a city dweller. And this is going to be very important as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to show you later on as we continue. We have from the dictionary nexus. It's Latin of nectare, to bind, and quite literally you're bound to the nexus. You're linked to it. It's the center. It's the focus. Uh, you and all these characters are linked to the nexus. Your left will later be populated by Frake's apprentice, Sage Frake, the Visionary, and Yuria the Witch, all adepts in magic. The distinguished surname Frake is thought to be derived from the Old English Furpe, meaning frith, wood, woodland. Alternatively, it may be related to the Old English freka, meaning man, warrior. From Japanese yu, meaning gentleness, lithe, superior. Ri, meaning village, combined with ah, meaning second, Asia. Other kanji combinations are possible from Japanese yuri for lily and ah for love. So on our right, we have fairly common people. Thomas and Baldwin are two skilled laborers, and we have four particularly faithful people. On the left, we have three adepts in magical mysteries. Both groups reside in the Nexus and are ideologically opposed. The symbolic parallelism of right and left is well known to occultists, religionists, philosophers, and others knowledgeable about spiritual matters. Right and left, it's very important. It's heavily found in media, in in a religious context, all over the world. I have some concise quotations here. I tried not to basically quote over much because it could probably be very boring to read if I brought too many citations, but this is from the Dictionary of Symbolism uh, by Hans Biedermann. Right and left, the two sides form a duality in which usually, but not always, the right is viewed more favorably. At the last judgment, the just take their place on the right side, and the damned on the left. And the risen Christ sits at the right hand of God, the Father Almighty. In the depictions of the crucifixion, the repentant thief is on Christ's right, and the unrepentant on his left. Dictionary of Symbolism. In many cultures, the right side is thought of as masculine and the left as feminine. The division implies a negative view of women, but it may also be related to an association of the right hand with everyday activities and the left with magic. In the tradition of European magic, the path to the right hand is referred to as white, and the one to the left as black magic. So there's black and white magic, and I may discuss that further in different blogs. There's also gray magic, and we will cover that to a high degree later on. But this book, The Dictionary of Symbolism, you can find it as a free PDF. Many people will say, well, downloading free PDFs is piracy, don't do that. But they're quite easy to find, and you will save yourself a great deal of money. I recommend it. I have a flash drive with hundreds, if not 1,000 books. It's certainly worth it. For those of us who simply want to know the symbolism in media, we need a great deal of written material. Um, and if we were to pay money for it, we would be paying hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. To be honest, I have so many books on symbolism, witchcraft, and many other things so that I can gain an understanding of it. Most major symbolism and many other things that have to deal with that, and many other things that we find in either witchcraft or Freemasonry, we can find in our scriptures. Of course, this is not expensive at all, but it says in Ecclesiastes, a wise man's heart is at his left, and oh goodness, at his right, but a fool's heart is at his left, and he shall set the sheep on his right, but the goats on his left. So right and left have basically a representation of the right being good, the left being evil, so to speak. This is sort of understood to be that way worldwide. The right represents uh, light, the left represents darkness, and so forth. Perhaps you have watched, videos or looked at magazine covers or seen celebrity photos, and there are people covering their right eyes, and maybe they have their left eye exposed, or maybe they're covering their left eye and maybe they have their right eye exposed. All of these Um, that is indeed a type of symbolism. Whether you are aware of it or not, it is indeed a type of symbolism. Um, that has to do with also symbolism of the eyes, the understanding that the right eye and the right side of the body is associated with the sun, and the left eye and the left side of the body is associated with the moon, and the left side is the feminine side and the right side is the masculine side, and so forth. But basically, for the purposes of, you know, of this particular analysis, all we need to know is that the historical context of right and left is that right is viewed favorably as good and left is viewed unfavorably as evil. Um, and peradventure, you weren't aware of that, but well, you are now. It's for many of us, it's quite novel. It's something quite hard to understand. But this used to be common knowledge at maybe even if you were to, do some reading about, it was more common knowledge years ago, not so long ago. It's simply that in our modern culture, most people don't really know much about symbolism, but hopefully this blog will help alleviate that. Anyhow, in the context of this game, the right side is the side of faith and miracles, and the left is the side of magic and sorcery. So we meet this person, the disciple of God. When one's faith status below 10, the disciple of God says the following: "A warrior from afar, are you? May you enjoy victory in battle. Umbasa." We, lacking faith, receive a prayer of blessing from him. When one's magic is below 10, Frake's apprentice has this to say: "What do you want, brute? I have no use for miscreants like yourself. Away with you." We, ignorant of the magical mysteries, are considered to be an unintelligent brute beast, basically. It can be said in another word that we are profane. This is a derogatory term of art that is used among adepts of the craft, that is to say, witchcraft. So the craft is Freemasonry. That is the craft. Maybe you're not aware of it. It it is basically witchcraft in the guise of a fraternal institution. There was a time when it could not be done publicly. The craft is witchcraft. Maybe you've heard people talk of speculative masonry and so forth. It's it's witchcraft. They're not laying bricks. They're not masons. That's what the craft is. Um, but even among people who practice Wicca and different types of fraternal and sororal um, organizations, covens, or just practitioners of magic in general, they use a term profane. Maybe you've never heard it, um, but it is it is a term of art, um, and we can find it in the dictionary here. Profane: not being among the initiated, not possessing esoteric or expert knowledge. In other words, you don't have the hidden knowledge, you don't have the mysteries. So you're less. But anyhow, let us review its use among those initiated in the magical mysteries. Profane sources such as governments traditionally forbade magic too, although today they simply mock the science. If you have the power to achieve any goal and the spiritual wisdom to know that you are free to do whatever you will, and if at the same time you are responsible for your actions, then governmental threats no longer have an effect on you. True magicians are threats to both religions and governments, not for what they do, but for who they are: liberated, responsible, independent people. So in this case, she's talking about profane sources. So governments are profane, you know, uh, to them because they don't acknowledge their power. People mock their science, what have you. This use is a one use of the word that I found in the Encyclopedia of Magic and Alchemy by Rosemary Ellen Guiley. You can find a lot of her PDF files on many popular PDF sites. You can find a lot of these PDFs anyhow on PDF Drive, QPDF, VDoc. There's a lot of PDF sites. I get all of her books free. I will not. I have no reason to pay for them, though. As reference books, they're very good. But there's no reason to pay for these books. If you're like me, you don't want to give these people money. To be honest, um, you're just trying to understand symbolism. You're trying to expose it. So anyhow, we have where the grant of relief to the profane would incapacitate us from granting similar relief to our brother, then we must then must the preference be given to him who is of the household. So the brother is a fellow brother in the craft, one initiated in the mysteries of magic, so to speak, the so-called secret knowledge of all the ages, as mentioned by Manly P. Hall. Um, so that grant of relief is not to go to a simple profane, but to a brother, if you can. And if you don't know the mysteries, you're not a brother. New and revised edition, an encyclopedia of Freemasonry and its kindred sciences, comprising a whole range of arts, sciences, and literature as connected with the institution, by Albert G. Mackey. I recommend you get all of the books by Albert G. Mackey so that you can understand Freemasonic symbolism and different um, types of, you know, of parlance, terms of art, what have you. You can learn a great deal from them. For these books, you don't have to make a study of them, but it's good to know the information in them. You can quote it. You can um, use that information to recognize things, symbolism in media, art, what have you. You know, it's always good to have these books on hand, and if possible, get them for free. Most of them can be acquired for free. Um, so now we have For the Sister, contain the most arcane um, symbols of the mysteries into which it was unlawful for the profane to look. So this is another book called Art Magic, William Britton. Um, the amount collected is under the immediate charge of the Grand Hospitaller or Almoner and is dispensed by him with the consent of the presiding officer, first to a worthy distressed brother, or, if there be none such, then to some needy and deserving profane, the book of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite of Freemasonry, containing instructions in all the degrees, from the third to the 33rd, and the last degree of the rite, together with ceremonies of. Yet these people have such long names for their books, but um, you can find this too. I believe I found it on archive.com. I find most of my out of print, sort of, out of copyright books on Freemasonry on archive. If you want to find those books, then please search on archive.com. You'll find plenty of those Freemasonic books to help you understand anything that has to do with Freemasonry, um, which is excellent, quite excellent. Imagine being a needy and deserving profane, receiving mercy vouchsafed to you by a condescending, initiated philanthropist. Does the aforementioned quote even sound as though they have any sort of favorable regard for people who are uninitiated in the mysteries of occultism? Those who are not adept in the occult mysteries are considered to be unworthy, vulgar, unintelligent, and bestial. They consider the uninitiated to be less than themselves. This prideful attitude is an actual cultural phenomenon, and it has a long history, especially among royalty and nobility. Speaking of which, that brings to mind the fragrant ring in the royalty class. Now, if you if you've played the game, you know that the royalty class is one of the favorite classes of the Demon Souls community, because they start out with a, a rare, unique catalyst, a little spell wand that's made of metal, and a fragrant ring that helps you recover some magic points, some MP. Um, so it's a nobleman's ring, forged with spices. Uh, and we have the the little armor set of person of royal descent who has officially learned spells. They use the spell Soul Arrow. Their soul level is at the worst, beginning at 1, but they are the only class that begins equipped with a rare ring. What you may not know is that there is an actual history of rural fervor for occult mysteries. I have a few citations here describing that. The Greeks loved astrology and democratized it, moving it out of the exclusivity of the royal court and into the hands of the masses. While astrology withered in the West, it continued to flourish in the East and the Islamic world. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, 10th century Persian alchemist and philosopher, refuted it, however, but it remained firmly entrenched in the royal courts and society. Cagliostro, Count Alessandro, Italian occultist and alchemist, reputed to be one of the most celebrated magicians of his time, a friend and successor of Comte de Saint Germain. Count Alessandro Cagliostro was a glamorous figure in the royal courts of Europe, where he practiced magic, psychic healing, alchemy, scrying, and other occult arts. He has been called both a fraud and a genuine adept. Shero, 1866 to 1936, professional name of famed Irish palm reader Count Louis Hamon Shero was famous among London's upper crust. He was known for his accurate predictions. His fame spread to Europe and America. Shero was so much in demand that in 1 year alone he read for 6,000 clients. His advice was sought by royalty, politicians, artists, and writers. Among his clients were American President Grover Cleveland, Oscar Wilde, England's King Edward VII, Belgium's King Leopold, Lord Randolph Churchill, Sarah Bernhardt, and others. Let's see, we have the famous John Dee, 1527 to 1608, alchemist, mathematician, astronomer, and astrologer, sometimes called the last royal magician because of his astrological services to Queen Elizabeth I. Dee was a scholarly man. Some say he was the most learned man in Europe of his time, who was fascinated by the occult and magic. He was an adept in Neoplatonic, Hermetic, and Kabbalistic philosophy. He devoted most of his life to communicate with spirits, for he had to rely on mediums due to his own lack of psychic ability. And then we have a particular fascination with royal blood in the occult treatise known as the Black Ship. This is a bit more recent than the other sources I've quoted, I think. But anyhow, these people practice chaos magic. Chaos has a lot to do with what we're going to be discussing. And we'll read more about that later, but let's see. The conductor of the ritual should have a large cup or other vessel filled with wine or any other beverage that can symbolize the blood of the demonic race, the royal blood of chaos. At this time, bless this blood by passing it through the black flame and proclaiming a verbal formula such as, "Behold, the royal blood, may it grow within us, increasing our power, deepening our wisdom, and inflaming our love." The blood should be passed among the participants, each taking a sip, the remainder poured into a cup or the bowl on the ancestral shrine. And ancestral worship is a whole another thing that I may review in separate videos. This book can also be found for free. And it's somewhat interesting to understand the phenomenon of chaos magic, to understand how chaos magic works and what these people happen to propose. It's very interesting. Here we have, continuing, when the history of occult elitism is understood, the demeanor of Frake's apprentice has a great deal more context, especially considering the fact that he is wearing the royalty class armor set. Here we have the worshiper of God. We have this woman uh, in the game. The faithful flock on the right is extremely meek. Some might say credulous, naive even, but they show no condescension, bless us, and are quite friendly. In a Christian fashion, perhaps. I would say that they do basically represent Christians in this narrative in an abstract sense, except for the very obvious idolatry relating to their talismans and miracle shards. It's very interesting. because they basically have these people on the right side of the nexus when you walk in and you come from that pool and you face it. You have these people, they act very kind, and they basically act like you would expect good Christians to act. They even have their little amen, but instead they say umbasa. It's a fictional device. It's done quite well, I would say, but you see very obvious condescension on the left side of the nexus, with Frake and his apprentice, which is very interesting. And to many people may not realize this. Many folks do not think that, or rather, they don't know about how condescending many practitioners of witchcraft actually are. They don't understand that there's a history behind it. And there's even a history behind royal, the royalty sort of being involved with witchcraft as a sort of elite sort of religion or supplement to their Christianity. But that is a very, very, um, that issue has a great deal of profundity that I could speak upon, but I'm going to save it. The worshiper of God is even so generous as to bequeath us, or Saint Urbain, with her remaining possessions and loose a blessing upon us. If your faith is 20 or above, talk to her and she'll basically give you a faint stone and two ephemeral eyes, and these are very useful. And she'll give them to you very kindly. She says, "You there, I can sense it. You can hear the voice of God, and you are battling those terrible demons. Our merciful God has sent you here to protect us. I will share with you everything I have. May the heavens gaze favorably upon you. Umbasa. I plan to bequeath all of my possessions to Saint Urbain. My grandfather's articles may contain more miracle stone shards like the one he gave me. It has no intrinsic powers in and of itself, but Saint Urbain can hear the voice of God through it." So this is the so-called talisman of God, and these are some stones. I have some ideas about those. Um, this is uh, obviously this is idolatry. But they basically represent Christians in this game. To to be honest, there's just too many similarities. You can tell that this is that their archetype, the archetype being used for these characters is basically a Christian archetype. And they're in contrast to the people on the left side who are basically practitioners of magic. They're basically adherents of witchcraft. Um, and they disagree on nearly every aspect. It's very interesting. So, the talisman of God looks somewhat like a mass of downward leaves, roots, broad tentacles, or peradventure thick tongues of flame, and made of metal. We see stones on Urbain's altar. Maybe the worshipper of God put them there from her shard collection. She has a certain collection of shards that she uses to, well, oh yeah, I read the quote. But you know what I'm talking about if you played the game. But if you didn't, it's all right. It's not really a big thing. But it's just interesting. She has all these stones, and they're right there on the altar. So it seems like she shared some with Urbane, and he put them there. Now, with the candles, there are 3 candles that are lit, and there's 4 candles in total. Maybe this doesn't mean anything, but 4 is a very unlucky number in Asian numerology, and 3 is favored in both Eastern and Western numerology. 3 is a very lucky number in Eastern and Western numerology. It's very highly regarded, um, which is very interesting. In the game Elden Ring, there's some things about numbers that I'm going to talk about, but it's just interesting that he has 3 candles lit. There's 1 candle that's not lit. If we were to light this candle, it would be 4 candles lit, which would maybe that would be interesting. That would maybe if you had 4 lit, it would represent death, and maybe by not lighting 4, it has some manner of meaning. There's about, let's see, 3 cups here, I believe. Interesting, very interesting. I don't really know what the symbolism of it could be further than that. So we have this quotation about the numbers. First, let's get the bad ones out of the way. 4 is an unlucky number in Japan because it sounds like she, death. This is why there are 2 readings for the number 4, she and yan. Whenever possible, people try to avoid using the deathly one. What does the religion of God? In Demon Souls, they literally call their god God. It's as said, it's basically monolatry or monotheism in a sense. No other god is referred to. Demons are referred to, but not God. So we have this religion that they practice. They basically speak about God, and their belief is basically a belief in God, a belief in good and evil, and they're in opposition to demons and what is called the soul arts. And the soul arts, it basically is their it's the word for magic and sorcery in this game. Um, it is rather strange to think that souls can be used as a source of power. The souls of demons are used to create miracles and spells. That very game mechanic shows us what the creators of this game wish to convey and promote to us. The moral of the story, so to speak, that they have given us is as follows: that good and evil are equal. They have the same source, and that any distinction that is perceived by mankind is an arbitrary delusion that they have created in their own minds. Reality is essentially non dualistic according to Demon Souls. So basically, the fact that your power source, Demon Souls, can be used to basically create miracles and spells, and that you're getting it from the same source, it's sort of it shows us that, I suppose, there's not really a difference in this game, as though they're trying to promote this understanding that good and evil are basically the same, and there's just something, that we're our idea that they're different is just entirely contrived. It isn't necessarily real as a boundary between good and evil. It's very, very interesting. Um, one moment. I have to do something really quick. All right. So this is the Talisman of Beasts. So the Talisman of Beasts and Frank's dialogue will give us a better understanding of this non-dualism. So it says, an old wooden amulet featuring a symbolic depiction of the Old One can be used to cast both miracles and magic. What was considered a depiction of God was in fact an image of the Old One, portrayed as a force of feral chaos, talisman of beasts. So this word chaos is very interesting. Um, so I have a few, well, two citations: encyclopedia definition and the definition of phrase and fable. Let's see. Chaos, Greek. Chaos is from the Greek word chaos, Khaos, meaning gaping void. And we have uh, is confusion, that confused mass of elemental substances supposed to have existed before God reduced creation into matter. The poet Hesiod is the first extant writer that speaks of it. Light, uncollected, through the chaos urged its infant way, nor order yet had drawn his lovely train from out of the dubious gloom. Thomson, Autumn, 72, 732, 4. So it's very interesting to say it's a gaping void. Now, later on in another blog, we're going to look at the Old One, but it basically is just a gaping void. It looks like a cone, sort of, but you can see the hole. Sort of sucks everything into itself. But the talisman it doesn't really do it justice until you see the final boss and you go inside it. But it's basically a void. It's chaos. It's basically just, it looks like it's consuming everything. And this is very important. The understanding of the word chaos and the context of chaos and what chaos means symbolically and spiritually. All right. So you have a talisman of beasts, crafted of primitive wood, and a talisman of God, forged of metal. Metallurgy. Metallurgy indicates an advanced civilization. The former represents chaos, and the latter represents order. Urbane's name means city dweller. A city requires a technically advanced civilization. Chaos is considered to be a primitive substance, predating all things and future complexities. Force of feral chaos. Talisman of beasts. Chaos meaning gaping void. So this is very interesting because we see there's a difference with chaos and order. With Saint Urbane, the city dweller, the a city requires order. It's a thing of advanced technical, civilization. You can't really create a city or any type of advanced human settlement without a degree of order. What happens after it's created, what chaos exists within it after that, that's a different matter. But as for a city, it needs some degree of order. So we can see that Urbane's name hints at it, the god of order, frankly, a god of stability, not a chaotic sort of entity, not a sort of pantheistic type of, you know, strange being that is just chaotic, just assimilating all things within itself. there's dichotomy, there's dualism, there's division between good and evil, order and chaos, and everything else, and different substances and individual people and souls and minds and persons and what have you. That's order. And then we have chaos, and this is the opposite. So let's continue. So Frake says the following: do you have a connection to the disciples? Do not pay attention to them if they speak poorly of me and my magic. Prayer is for the foolish, quaint, and soon to be dead. And heaven forbid the day you find out what their so called God really is. Frake. So, according to demon souls, God is both a soul devouring beast, demon, and establisher of order who blesses the faithful. In order, the faithful prosper, and in chaos, the magicians have opportunities to further their own powers. Therefore, the Old One / God is the source of miracle and spell power. It indicates the dissolution of all differences, right and left, good and evil, light and darkness, and so on, all dissolved in formless, primitive chaos, no absolute truth, and therefore no falsehood. In the occult sense, it brings to mind the proponents of gray magic and non dualism. Gray magic is essentially white and black magic mixed. It's the synthesis of black and white magic. And magic itself, whether you decide to be a good witch or a bad witch or what have you, to be a white witch or a black witch, whatever terms we use, there's a tradition in witchcraft to consolidate the two, to assimilate the two. And there's an understanding that true witchcraft is practiced by doing both good and evil deeds, and eventually not even acknowledging, and doing as much as you can to not even acknowledge a difference between good and evil. Now, this is called gray magic. Many of us have heard of black magic and white magic. According to witches, you know, white magic is basically doing good things, and black magic is basically doing evil things, according to them. But oftentimes, the two differences in magic are not strictly adhered to. Most witches adhere to a doctrine of non dualism. Most do. So let's see, we have the Wicca, Witch, Wiktionary, whatever it's called, which is a pretty good choice, um, as far as words are concerned. Anyhow, non-dualism, the belief that dualism or dichotomy are illusory phenomena, that things such as mind and body may remain distinct while not actually being separate. It brings the mind to mind the Freemason motto of the 33rd degree, Ordo ab Chao, translated to order from chaos. According to Christian scripture, is there any darkness or chaos in God? Um, this then is the message which we have heard of him and declare unto you, that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. Some sort of metaphysical vampirism is occurring in this game. Through the powers of the maiden in black, a soul may be consumed and processed into power, channeled into favorable attributes. What sense does it make? How is a soul devoured? So we have a few dictionary articles um, here. We have soul, the immaterial essence, animating principle, or actuating cause of an individual life. We have soul and spirit. The soul contains the passions and desires which animals have in common with man. The spirit is the highest and distinctive part of man. In 1 Thessalonians, Paul says, I pray God, you, whole spirit, soul, and body be preserved blameless unto the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Uh, we have here continuing, our character, like the demons, consumes souls, albeit through the maiden in black. So, how is the character anything less than a demon? Does the nature of the souls devoured change our own? The significance of this is vague and unexplained. Soul of the mind, and this is that famous quote from The Maiden in Black, soul of the mind, key to life's ether, soul of the lost, withdrawn from its vessel, let strength be granted, so the world might be mended. We, the players, destroy physical bodies, pillage and consume souls, as do the demons, and somehow the result of our reaping of souls shall be a mended world. Interesting. So, what is a demon? So, we have here um, an evil spirit, a source or agent of harm, distress, or ruin, usually daemon, a supernatural being of Greek mythology intermediate between gods and men. Daemon, a spirit holding a middle place between gods and men, such as the daemon or good genius of Socrates, an evil spirit, devil, uh, Latin daemon, daemonus, with supernatural of power or intelligence more than human. All right. So Frake believes that demonhood is a higher state to that of man. He says, I know 3 human leaders who became demons. King Alant of Boletaria rather, Astraea of the Valley of Defilement, and the Golden Elder of Latria. They have proven that humans can evolve to a higher state. We were wrong to assume that only demons could do demon work. Bravo! You have brought more demon souls to me. Thank you. You are a fine magician. Let me pass on further arts of the wand. I am one step closer to the essence of the demon, soul. Our human potential is great. The power of magicians is increased while demons roam the earth. Both Frake and Uriah take advantage of this. As you know, magic is one of the soul arts, says Frake. Um, yeah. The Scourge of Boletaria has activated all souls and energized all magic. Perhaps then we should work to preserve this state of heightened reality. No, no, heaven forbid. The demons steal souls, and with them our sanity. Such blasphemy must not be permitted. It's very interesting. It seems as though Frank was having some degree of conflict in his, some type of moral conflict, struggling with some degree of cognitive dissonance. Who can say? Okay. Here we have Uriah the Witch. Very interesting character. We'll probably talk some about her later. Maybe in another blog post, but right now we're going to review what she says. Once I lusted after the power offered by demon souls. I ventured through the fissure into Boletaria, but became trapped in the nexus. Uria. Okay. Interesting. A state of heightened reality, activated souls, and energized magic. The soul is the source of emotion and thought. It is metaphysical, and yet without a body, we can move and interact and act our will on the physical plane in soul form as we are bound to the nexus. Souls are used as a common currency in Boletaria and apparently sustain sanity. And yet, how a corporeal body could even live without a soul remains entirely unexplained in Demon Souls. It simply doesn't make sense. Very, very strange. If you haven't played the game, basically when you enter the Nexus, you're dead, and your body is sort of you're moving around as a spirit, basically. And so, by finding stones of ephemeral eyes, you can become you can regain your physical body, but for the most part you're walking around without a body. You're basically in what they call soul form, which is very interesting. It makes very it's very I'm looking into it. I'm trying to understand what the symbolic reasoning behind all of this could be, if there's any. I'm almost sure that there is. Anyhow, the spiritual has been reified or carnalized into a physical reality. Souls can be used like anything that is physical and even consumed in this world. So, in other words, they've made things that we would consider spiritual, metaphysical, and corporeal into literal physical things that you can touch, things that you can buy and sell. You can buy and sell souls in this game, which is very disturbing. It doesn't make, once again, it's another thing, doesn't make much sense. I am in the process of trying to understand what reasoning there is behind it and to know if there's any symbolism that is deeper than what I don't already know. So, this is a very interesting fact that real adepts in magic do prefer a state of heightened reality. The mind and demons slash spirits play integral roles in achieving this. So right here, mystical traditions have long taught that thought, in other words, our intentionality creates reality. Call it intentionality or magic. The fundamental principles are the same. Liber Null, half of which is devoted to the black arts, a natural inclination of humans, teaches that magical abilities are attained through altered states of consciousness, which can be learned without any symbolic system except reality itself. Psychonaut is intended for group magic and shamanic practice. Carroll states that magic is the life force of the universe and is not human hearted. Therefore, the wizard or magician cannot be human hearted when he seeks to tap into this power. He must perform monstrous and arbitrary acts to push past its limitations. For only in its streams can the spirit or Kia discover itself. Very interesting. So we see magic allows us to rewrite reality and to make the future what we want it to be. So we have here, I live with, so this is Sorceress Cagliostro. This is a name that she sort of made for herself. So she says, I live with an eternal portal. The disincarnate, walk about in my life just as the living do, with the exception that they can enter my house, my bedroom, and anywhere they like, whenever they like. I set rules and most of them follow. My 9 attending demons help keep it all in order, but in reality, there's no downtime for me. So very interesting. This may help us understand something about their heightened state of reality and peradventure somehow, working with spirits, the mind, and among other things. This helps us understand what Frake is saying to a degree. Um, just as this woman says, she has spirits all around her, working with her. Um, they have something to gain from these spirits, and even bringing the thoughts in their mind to extremes. Very interesting. We can understand what Frake is saying when he's talking about a heightened state of reality. It's very interesting. All right, let's continue. In other words, the veil is thin. This is a very old expression, which means that the veil between our reality, our physical reality, and spiritual reality has thinned, allowing both to converge and for supernatural phenomena to manifest in this world. Hence, such a state is conducive to strong magic. So, this heightened state of reality is the veil being thin to the degree where spirits can roam throughout Volataria and the earth and do as they please. Now, the worshippers of God, they don't favor this. They don't like this. This isn't something that normal people want, but people who practice the craft, people who practice magic, they want this. This is something they consider to be quite beneficial in their magical work. But what about the worshippers of God? What about skilled laborers like Baldwin and and Thomas, who aren't shown to be particularly faithful or even worshippers of God, so to speak? But you know, what would they think of this world? They don't seem to like this world full of demons. If you read the dialogue, they don't seem to particularly like that demons are just simply roaming the earth. But the witches, the people on the left side, seem to be more enthusiastic about it, or they definitely are. They like the fact that's the case. That is the case. The only person on the left side who seems to take issue with it to some degree is Uriah. She doesn't seem to think that what she did in the past when she pursued demon souls was a good thing, and now she has some different views, but she's still sitting on the left side with Frake and his apprentice. Very interesting. And she's still basically practicing magic. So let's see. Um, this is part one. And Lord willing, I will give a part two revealing whatever symbolism and esoteric knowledge that I can find in this game. This is a worthy preparation for my analysis of Elden Ring. I have a very strong assumption that Miyazaki and others who work for FromSoft are adepts, if not masters of occultism. Furthermore, it makes me ponder if Demon Souls is more of an initiation into non-dualism and magical theory than a video game. Well, I suppose that it is both. I would say that most people don't at all understand the symbolism that is presented in it, such that they are unwittingly receiving an education. Most average people know nothing about magic. They don't practice it, they don't understand it. The creators of present day media infuse magical concepts throughout their works. Those who consume it don't know this. Explanations are therefore needed. The Meditations on Media series is an attempt to provide some degree of symbolic and esoteric education. The creators of present day media know that their audience, for the most part, is ignorant of symbolism. Wherefore, we are the unwilling recipients of this occult education. Um, where we, the unwillingly being willing recipients of this occult education, become emotionally attached to the media which has hidden meanings. How foolish must we be who do not understand the actual meanings of the media that we consume? So we have this quote from Matthew: "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. May you be blessed in the name of Jesus Christ." All right. So this is for people who want to know more, basically. Many folks are very familiar with RPGs and games of this sort. To be entirely honest, I prefer to play them. To be honest, I don't play as much as I used to. I I have a lack of desire to play them because I see so much symbolism in them. But for those who do play them, many people, they don't recognize that they're being taught something. Many people are very unaware, and many of those folks, they're not aware of what they're learning, and they should be aware. And so it's my pleasure to provide some education. Maybe you think, well, you've taken these ideas and concepts and you've sort of extrapolated upon them to such a degree that it, it doesn't make any sort of logical sense. But very few people know even the most basic symbolism, quite literally. Um, and what is obvious to me is not obvious to many people. Um, so at least think about it. And think about the media that you watch, the media that you consume, whether you agree with what the media teaches or not. Hopefully, you will understand that you are being educated. You're receiving an education, you're being taught things, whether you be a Christian or a witch. Maybe you are one. Um, you, you yourself are being influenced by these things. And there are many people who say, well, the media is just for fun. It's the video games and television shows and anime and manga. They're just made to be cool. That's it. There's nothing behind it, behind the symbolism. Oh, they just read some things about old religions and they put some symbolism in it to make it seem cooler. But I'm telling you, if you are incapable of critically thinking about these things, about um, esoteric symbolism in media, then you lack you lack a great deal in the way of symbolic, spiritual, philosophical knowledge. It's it's very undervalued. Many people don't think they need it. They don't think that they necessarily need to care about such things. But I'm telling you, it is very, very useful. And as for my fellow Christians, many of you will think, well, we don't need to know what it means. We don't need to understand what symbolism means. What you don't realize is that you yourself are being influenced. And so, by knowing the symbolism, you can have some ideological stability. And that's true for anyone. it's it's best not to be in the dark. It's best to have knowledge and not simply embrace ignorance and believe, I don't need to know these things and I'm just having fun. I just, I don't need to ask questions. I don't need to think about what I'm watching, what I'm reading in a comic book or a manga or anything else. I don't need to dig through books to find symbolism. But I tell you, many of the people who you may very well call crazy or you may say are um, people who are just coming up with theories and so forth, which I will say this media, there are subjective interpretations for certain. There are subjective interpretations, but there's also long-standing traditions of symbolism, of occultism that has been used throughout media throughout ages, going back hundreds, if not thousands of years. Common themes, common elements in the things that have been promoted throughout history, not just in this day and age, but certain symbolic knowledge, which may have been commonplace 100 or 200 or so years ago, is very difficult to accept these days for most people because of our modernity, because of the mind of the modern mankind, who has a very hard time accepting that things are hidden in art. If we know anything about art, such as that which has been created by Leonardo da Vinci, we know that artists hide things in their art, and there's a long-standing tradition of that occurring. We should know about it. As educated individuals, we should seek to educate ourselves any way that we can. Save as many books as you can, find as many sources as you can, wherever you can find them. If you have to go and download PDF files to gain a better understanding of something, it's certainly very reasonable. But in the meantime, I'm going to be creating these blogs. I'm going to be creating these videos to help people have a better understanding of these matters, especially regarding the media. I'm also going to be talking about false teachers of of the gospel and many other people, frankly, um, and different subjects. It's going to be quite interesting. I have two more blogs here um, that I may do meditation on media Claymore next. This is a particular manga that is very interesting, but I don't know. I don't know which video I'm going to do next, but this will this will have to suffice for now. This has been very enjoyable. May the Lord bless you. Amen. All right.